One freezing winter night in Riverbrook, Pennsylvania, a homeless black veteran wandered into a small diner, seeking nothing more than a warm meal. But what happens when two ruthless police officers set their sights on him, unaware that he was once a battlefield hero with direct ties to the Pentagon? A single act of injustice inadvertently ignited a revolution. It exposed a nationwide conspiracy targeting forgotten veterans. This is the story of Marcus Hayes, a man who survived the horrors of war only to face another battle on American soil, a battle for dignity, justice, and hope. What would you do if you witnessed someone being treated like garbage simply because they had no home? Join Veteran Best Stories. Follow the extraordinary journey of this man deemed invisible. Under the heavy snowfall of a Riverbrook winter, the small town seemed to sink into a white slumber. The bitter wind swept through every alleyway, carrying a numbness that seeped through every layer of clothing, every crack indoors. Cars parked along the street were coated in ice. The windows of houses cast a faint yellow glow, silently contrasting with the frigid chill beyond. In that scene, Marcus Hayes, 44, alone, trudged across the main street. His tall frame was buried in a worn, tattered military coat. On its sleeve, the patch of an American flag had faded almost beyond recognition. But to him, it remained an indelible mark. The 3 tours in Afghanistan, where he had once held the rank of sergeant, where he left behind blood, tears, and pieces of his soul that would never return. His leather boots had cracked, the hem of his jeans frayed, yet each step remained solemn, resolute as on the day he served. The wind whipped at his collar, forcing through every thread, but Marcus did not slow. The hunger that had tormented him for 3 days eased only by the thought that tonight, with his veteran's benefit just arrived in his account, he would have a hot, decent meal. A small luxury in a string of silent battles against the cold, the emptiness, and the indifferent stares of a society that had forgotten his name. He headed toward Starlight Diner, a small eatery on the corner where the neon sign flickered through the snow like a faint lighthouse amid a storm. For men like Marcus, that light symbolized hope, even if only briefly. The glass door opened. The wind chime above tinkled softly. He stepped inside, and the warm atmosphere immediately enveloped his freezing body, along with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, sizzling meat, and steaming French fries. Marcus's whole being seemed to pause, a sensation of being alive again, even if just for a few moments. But the warmth didn't last. When he seated himself on a stool at the counter, the diner's mood suddenly shifted. Laughter halted, forks suspended mid-air. People began to stare at him. A black man in ragged clothes, clearly homeless, with eyes half wary, half disdainful, then quickly turned away as if his presence might taint their meal. A mother gently pulled her child closer, eyes wide with alarm. An elderly man placed a hand on his inner jacket pocket, where he concealed his wallet. Marcus knew these reactions well. He had lived with them for years, since leaving the service and realizing the country he once served had no place for those who returned empty-handed. He didn't react. He murmured under his breath, addressed to no one, as if reminding himself, "Just passing through, looking for a hot meal." His voice was low, even-toned, carrying the weight of a man who had walked through explosions, who had witnessed death, who had endured a cruelty more brutal than any contempt. Behind the counter, Claire Thompson, a 24-year-old waitress saving every dollar for college, watched him. 2 years at Starlight Diner had taught her to recognize situations that might turn sour. But when she looked into Marcus's eyes, she saw something different. Not danger, but exhaustion, weariness, and something deeply human, something many chose not to see. She hesitated, then gently placed the menu on the counter before him. From a corner of the diner, two police officers, Walker and Holt, regulars every Wednesday night, sharpened their gaze at her. Claire maintained a calm tone. "Sir, what would you like?" Marcus looked up, answering briefly and clearly. "Black coffee, and today's special if you don't mind, ma'am." The way he addressed her as ma'am surprised Claire, not the mocking tone she had become accustomed to. She offered a slight smile, then poured the coffee, striving to conceal her emotions. "Fried chicken with mashed potatoes and gravy, served with corn on the cob and bread," she said. Marcus nodded. His rough hands lifted the cup of coffee. The warmth spread slowly from his palms to his heart. "It's been a long time since I've had a home-style meal," he murmured, almost whispering. A mocking laugh echoed from the corner of the diner. Holt curled his lip in a sneer. "Digging through the trash doesn't count as eating out, does it?" Walker glanced over, speaking as if sharing everyday gossip. "Keep an eye on the cutlery, Claire. These vagrants have sticky fingers." Their words were as cold as snow, but Marcus did not look up. He merely narrowed his eyes, staring into the deep black of his coffee. Claire's cheeks burned with embarrassment, yet she forced a polite, professional smile. She turned, walked toward the kitchen, murmuring under her breath, "I'll place the order right away." Then Marcus's gentle voice floated behind her, devoid of reproach, devoid of sarcasm, simply a sincere expression of gratitude. "Thank you, ma'am." Under the pressure of the confined space and the weighty presence of two uniformed officers, breathing within Starlight Diner slowed and grew uneasy. Holt strode toward the counter, broad shoulders squared, each step full of authority. He did not sit like a regular patron. Rather, he sat as someone claiming the place. Beside Marcus, the empty stool was deliberately occupied, pressed so close that every breath seemed to brush against each other. Walker followed, his gaze never straying from Marcus's slightest movement, like an analyzing shadow. Holt's voice rang out, clear yet restrained, aimed at someone else but also serving as a preemptive strike at Marcus. "Hey, Claire, how's your brother doing these days? Still planning to join the police academy?" The question sounded caring, but it carried something else beneath the surface. Claire betrayed no emotion. She answered tersely, "He's doing well. He just topped the shooting exam." Holt smirked softly, his glance sweeping over Marcus. "Excellent. We need more people like him, people who know how to protect the community, who know how to maintain order, and most importantly, who know how to eliminate dangerous types. Junkies, beggars, and those who claim to be veterans, using their years of service to beg for sympathy." Marcus lifted his coffee mug, took a sip, offered no reply. His face remained unmoved, as if those words had never reached his ears. But Claire heard every single one, and she knew they were no coincidence. Walker leaned in closer, his body like a barrier, pinning Marcus between two sources of pressure. "You know, Claire," he said, as though delivering a lesson, "there are plenty of imposters claiming heroism, never saw a day of combat in their lives, yet they drain the system with pity plays, as if we owe them something." Claire stepped forward with a plate of food. Her hand trembled slightly as she placed the meal before Marcus. A plate of fried chicken, mashed potatoes, bread, and steamed corn, the house special. A simple meal, but in that moment, it became a collision point between compassion and power. Holt grabbed a packet of sugar from the counter, flung it directly onto Marcus's plate, his voice dripping with mockery. "Here, buddy, find a way to earn a living, maybe dance. Guys like you are great at putting on a show anyway." The space froze. No one in the diner uttered a word. A teen at a back table quietly raised his phone, began recording. Marcus did not look at anyone. He picked up the sugar packet with 2 fingers, turned slowly, then placed it on Holt and Walker's table. His movement was neither swift nor forceful, yet each gesture carried weight. "I earned my dignity in Kandahar," he said slowly, his tone even, not angry, simply the truth. "I don't need to reclaim it from you." A moment of silence fell. Then Walker reacted first. His hand moved toward his holster, a warning in his eyes. "Threatening the police, huh? You know who you're talking to?" Marcus returned to his meal, his voice unchanged. "I'm just here for dinner, sir." Holt didn't wait. The chair scraped loudly across the floor as he sprang up. "Get out of here. You're causing trouble." Marcus remained calm. He did not rise, nor did he back down. His voice was clear, free of bitterness. "I paid for my meal." The officers asked no further questions. They grabbed him, one hand on his shoulder, the other pulling him up from the stool. Their uniforms moved as if arresting an armed suspect, not a man eating fried chicken. Before being hauled toward the door, Marcus turned back, looked straight at Claire. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough for everyone to hear. "If anything happens to me, call General Ramsey at the Pentagon. Tell him Marcus Hayes is in trouble." Claire froze. Her heart skipped a beat. Marcus Hayes, Ramsey, the Pentagon, names that did not belong in the small diner where she worked each night, words that did not fit the image of a ragged man being dragged across the floor by 2 police officers. Walker and Holt laughed loudly. They thought his words were a joke, the ramblings of a loser clinging to old illusions of glory. Yet their grip tightened, as if the more they mocked, the more they needed to prove their power. Marcus was shoved out into the parking lot. On the snow-covered ground, his heavy footsteps sounded like hammers striking at his pride. They slammed him against the side of the patrol car, no reason needed. Meanwhile, a metal dog tag snagged on Walker's watch, then slipped free, tumbling into the snow. Holt bent down and saw it, but instead of retrieving it, he pressed his boot down on it. His voice dripped with contempt. "A real hero, huh?" Without waiting for a response, they threw Marcus into the back seat, then sped off, disappearing behind the thick curtain of snow. Claire stood there, still motionless. The patrons inside returned to their meals, as if the incident had been merely a forgettable scene in the evening's drama. But she could not stand still. Her feet carried her outside, defying the biting cold. She knelt down, probing through the snow that piled up with each passing second. Moments later, her fingertips brushed cold metal. She lifted it, the military dog tag, the engraving sharp and clear. Hayes, Marcus L. O. Baptist. In her coat pocket, her phone still recorded. His voice, the scrape of the chair, his words, everything was captured, unedited. Claire looked from the dog tag to the phone, then whispered as if seeking permission, "Don't be crazy." Her hand dialed the number. After 3 rings, a voice answered, "Hello, this is the Pentagon operator." In the staff restroom of Starlight Diner, Claire locked the door. Her hands clutched the edge of the sink as if it were the only thing keeping her from collapsing. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her heart pounded with frantic intensity. The phone trembled in her hand. Its screen displayed "connecting." On the other end was the Pentagon operator, a place she had never imagined calling in her life. Now the only place she could turn to for a man she barely knew, the same man she had hesitated to take an order from just hours earlier. When the voice finally answered, cold, precise, she could only stammer, "I need to speak with General Ramsey. It's about Marcus Hayes. He's in trouble." Each word lodged in her throat, as if uttering them would cause everything to shatter. She braced herself to be labeled insane, to be grilled with questions, or to have the call cut off at once. But what happened next silenced her completely. "This is Colonel Monroe, assistant to General Ramsey. Who are you, and what is your connection to Hayes?" The voice was steely, not one to entertain a joke. Claire swallowed hard, fought to steady her breath, and began to recount every detail. How Marcus had been dragged out of the diner, how the officers had treated him like a dangerous criminal. A long silence followed. Claire thought the call had dropped. Then another voice spoke, deeper, more resonant, every bit as sharp. "I am General Edward Ramsey. Tell me everything from the start. Leave out nothing." In his office in Washington, D.C., Ramsey removed his glasses, stood abruptly. On his desk lay classified dossiers and intelligence reports, yet they lay forgotten. Everything lost its meaning when the name Marcus Hayes surfaced, the man who had saved his life from certain death, who had defied an order to withdraw, charging into Taliban gunfire to drag Ramsey and 3 other soldiers from a burning Humvee. It was 2003 in Kandahar. That night was etched into Ramsey's memory like a scar across his chest. When Claire finished, her voice hoarse with tension, she added in a whisper, "I have video. I'll send it, if it can help." Instantly, Ramsey ordered, "My assistant will send you a secure link. Upload that video there, then leave the diner. Go home. Tell no one. Understood?" Claire nodded, though unseen. "But what about Marcus? Is he all right?" For the first time in the call, Ramsey paused, then spoke, slower, heavier. "Hayes is one of the finest soldiers I have ever commanded, and I never abandon my men." The call ended, yet for Ramsey the battle was only beginning. He turned to Colonel Monroe. "Contact the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, Veterans Affairs, and the Office of the Inspector General. Everybody. Mark it urgent. It's about Marcus Hayes." 5 phone calls, 5 emphatic utterances of a single name. Each line went silent for a few seconds, then suddenly rushed as though by reflex. That sluggish system now moved with astonishing speed, because it knew, when Edward Ramsey called someone's name, it was a summons of honor. At the Riverbrook police station, Marcus sat leaning against the cold brick wall in the bare holding cell. The ache in his left rib reminded him of Walker's blow, but it did not bring him to his knees. His eyes half closed, he regulated his breathing as if he were back in Kandahar, the place where he once learned to keep his mind calm amid bombs. No resentment, no anger, just waiting. Footsteps echoed, decisive, urgent. The cell door burst open. 2 strangers in black suits entered. Their agent badges gleamed on their chests. The female agent spoke first, her tone brief, icily sharp. "Mr. Hayes, you are to be released immediately." Marcus opened his eyes, slowly rose. "Faster than usual," he said, a weary smile curling his lips. The female agent nodded. "Order of General Ramsey, in person." They said no more, escorted him down the corridor, past the guards' confused stares. From the office ahead, raised voices bickered. Walker was arguing fiercely with the chief, his tone curt, full of rage. The male agent did not pause, but left behind words as cold as steel. "The Department of Defense has been notified. All actions here will be investigated. I suggest you review the Constitution." Marcus continued walking, but when he passed Walker, he stopped. Not to take revenge, not to threaten, only to speak what he believed. "The truth," he said, eyes steady, "does not need violence to stand firm." No one answered. No one dared. He stepped out of the station, the steel door shut behind him as though severing a chapter of pain. The night sky held no more snow, but the wind still bit. He did not shiver. He did not bow his head. His back was straight, his shoulders unbowed. This was not the first time he emerged from darkness, but this time he was no longer alone. Outside the police station, Claire stood alone on the freezing sidewalk. Her thin coat was not enough to keep her warm. Her hands curled inside her pockets as if trying to hide her confusion. She didn't know what would happen next. Her mind whirled between worry and doubt. But when she saw the door open and Marcus step out, his posture still straight, his gaze still calm, Claire almost cried out of relief. She ran toward him, her feet slipping slightly on the icy pavement. "You're okay!" The words burst out in ragged breaths. No need for explanation, no need for apology, just a simple truth. Marcus looked at her. His eyes softened, as if the whole world had quieted. "You called." The statement carried no question. It sounded like confirmation. Claire nodded. Her hand retrieved the dog tag, now free of snow, cold as ice but still gleaming under the streetlights. "I didn't think it would work," she whispered, handing it to him. "Calling the Pentagon sounded crazy, but I had to try." Marcus took it. His fingers traced the familiar metal surface slowly. The sensation brought him back to the years he had buried. "The truth," he said in a low voice, "always makes cowards tremble. And Ramsey keeps his promises." Claire could not hide her curiosity. "Who is he? How does a general know you?" Marcus looked up at the night sky, the stars peeking through thin clouds. "A long story, and not for tonight." She gave a small nod, then handed him a small paper bundle. "The cook wrapped up the leftovers you didn't eat. I thought you might want to keep it." Marcus accepted it, heavy in his hands, a simple meal, yet filled with kindness, something he hadn't felt in a long time. "Kindness like this," he said softly, "is slowly disappearing. You should keep it." Then, without waiting for another word, he turned and walked away, his figure gradually fading into the thin snowfall, like a silhouette separating from the noisy world, carrying both sadness and pride. In Washington, D.C., in a quiet yet pressure-filled office, General Edward Ramsey set down the phone after a brief call, then dialed another number. On the other end was Olivia Bennett, one of the most renowned civil rights attorneys today, and the goddaughter he had once regarded as family. "I need you to help an old friend," Ramsey began, without beating around the bush. "His name is Marcus Hayes. He's caught in a storm." Olivia, sitting amid a pile of documents, immediately sat up straight. "What kind of storm?" "The kind that doesn't come from nature," Ramsey replied slowly, "but from those with power and no conscience. Hayes is the man who once saved my life. Now it's time I repay him." Without hesitation, Olivia affirmed, "I'll go to Riverbrook." 3 days later, she set foot in that small town. The cold there came not only from the climate, but also from the wary gazes of the locals. At the Oak Haven shelter, she found Marcus sitting alone with an old cup of coffee. The faint steam dissipated like a weary silhouette. Olivia approached, extending her hand. "Mr. Hayes, I'm Olivia Bennett. General Ramsey sent me here." Marcus shook her hand, his eyes observing quietly. "Ramsey moves quickly," he said. Olivia smiled, not withdrawing her hand immediately. He said you'd refuse to help, but you're too smart to do that. Marcus gestured for her to sit, but his gaze remained distant. I've been managing on my own for a long time. Not sure a lawyer from D.C. can do anything against this town's police. Olivia opened her briefcase, pulled out marked documents, her voice sharp as a blade. They violated your civil rights, and you are not the first case. This is no longer about a disrupted dinner. This is the manifestation of a broken system. Marcus looked down at his coffee cup, his eyes narrowing slightly. A spark of anger flickered like a crack in a stone wall left untouched for too long. I don't want to rekindle a war, he said slowly. Olivia leaned forward, her voice not loud, but as firm as a knock that cannot be ignored. The war began a long time ago, Mr. Hayes. You didn't start it, but you are on the front lines. Marcus fell silent. Outside the window, the wind made the glass tremble faintly. No one spoke for a long moment, but his gaze met hers with something other than suspicion. It was the measured consideration of a man who survived by knowing when to fight and when to stand up. Olivia began by meeting Claire privately. They sat together in a small cafe on the edge of town. She carefully reviewed the video Claire had recorded on her phone. Then she gathered additional footage from the Starlight Diner security cameras. Every frame, every second of footage was preserved and analyzed. Nothing was left out. Meanwhile, Claire still bore bruises on her wrists, evidence of what had occurred. Yet the calm in her eyes declared that she would not remain silent. In parallel with processing the evidence, Olivia traced Walker and Holt's personnel files. She delved into internal reports, complaints previously filed with the department, and uncovered a long string of allegations related to unwarranted violence, all of which had been dismissed or never investigated. One of these involved a homeless man named Leroy Brooks. He had once sued Holt, then abruptly withdrew the lawsuit without explanation, and vanished from Riverbrook without a trace. When Marcus heard that name, he quietly said, "Troublemakers here either disappear or learn to keep quiet." In his voice was an old sorrow, one that had never truly been silenced. But Olivia did not stop. She followed the smallest clues and discovered a secret group operating within the police department, called Sentinels. It was not an official organization, yet its reach was widespread. They shared a goal: to remove homeless people, especially veterans, from Riverbrook's streets, to clean up the town. Men who once swore to protect their country now became obstacles in the eyes of local authorities. When the first video went viral, Claire was fired from Starlight without a clear reason. Yet she did not back down. On the contrary, she proposed a bold plan to Olivia: to produce a short documentary telling the story of mistreated veterans. She did not want to merely speak. She wanted to show the entire country. Jamal Tech Carter, formerly a technology specialist in Marcus's unit, was contacted and immediately agreed to join. He brought his expertise in tech, lighting, and post-production, turning narrative into images, transforming truth into something undeniable. The first video, recounting Marcus's story, was posted on social media. No one expected it to explode. Millions of views, tens of thousands of shares. The name Marcus Hayes became a focal point, not only as a symbol of injustice, but also as a voice for thousands of other nameless people. That wave reached Ethan, Claire's younger brother and now a cadet at the State Police Academy. He had always believed in the ideal of protecting the community, yet he now faced a darker reality. Ethan revealed to Olivia that the real combat lesson footage at the academy used actual recordings of violence, many created by the Sentinels as a special training lesson. Ethan decided to wear a recording device. During an internal conversation, he captured evidence that Captain Vance, the unofficial leader of the Sentinels, was covertly working with the defense contractor Apex Solutions. Their goal was to force homeless people off prime land parcels to serve a military development project. Vance was not just a cop, he was the linchpin of a much larger conspiracy. But those discoveries came at a price. Olivia was nearly struck by a car as she left the office. Her apartment was ransacked, her laptop disappeared, and her documents were scattered. No trace was left, except the feeling of being watched relentlessly. Claire vanished from home one afternoon, without leaving a message. After hours of searching, Marcus learned that Walker and Holt were operating off-duty, and there was a suspicion that they had kidnapped Claire. Unable to wait for the police, Marcus assembled a small team, entirely composed of fellow veterans he once served with. The rescue took place under cover of darkness, in an abandoned warehouse south of town. With precise tactics and a clear formation, Marcus and his teammates quickly subdued Holt. Walker tried to resist, but he was restrained. When Claire was freed, she was bruised, but her eyes were unbroken. While she was held captive, she had turned on her recorder, capturing every word Walker spewed in his rage. "Nobody believes the word of a junkie or a crazy old vet. We bury them, and nobody cares." That audio, when incorporated into the new video edited by Jamal, combined with the evidence Ethan had gathered, became a lethal blow. Claire stood before the camera, her expression resolute, her voice hoarse yet unwavering. The video was released on Monday morning, and within 12 hours, it surpassed 5 million views. Pressure on the authorities exploded. The Department of Justice was forced to step in, launching a federal investigation. The walls the Sentinels had built over years began to crack. Captain Vance fled the state without explanation. A week later, Walker was found dead in his apartment, officially ruled as a drug overdose. But for those in the know, it was no accident. There was only one certainty. From a disrupted dinner, a disrespected veteran, to a wave of justice spreading nationwide, nothing is more powerful than a story told at the right time, told in the right way, by people who dare to stand up. In the crowded community meeting room, the air was heavy as if everyone held their breath, waiting for something monumental to happen. The rows of makeshift plastic chairs were filled, not only by Riverbrook residents, but also by reporters, veterans from neighboring towns, and those who had once been homeless, but now wore knitted caps and worn coats, sitting silently like living witnesses. Light from the projector cast onto Olivia Bennett's face as she stood in the center of the room. The remote control in her hand trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from the weight of the truth she was about to lay down. On the screen behind her, email files appeared, followed by financial statements, maps of the seized properties, and finally, the video that exposed the relationship between Apex Solutions and the Sentinels within the police department. A covert agreement to clean out homeless people, especially veterans, from strategically valuable land. No one in the audience whispered anymore. Only Olivia's voice rebounded, each word hammering away at the facade of a town that once prided itself on tranquility. Claire was the next to step forward. Her tone was not loud, but clear. She recounted the night at Starlight, the moment Marcus had walked in and the entire diner fell silent. The moment she chose to stand on the side of what was right. Her hand unconsciously touched the old bruise on her collarbone, now faded, but the memory remained vivid. Tears did not fall, but something cracked open in the eyes of those listening, as if, for the first time, they saw themselves in that story. Ethan, wearing his police academy cadet uniform, stepped up amid glances that mixed reproach and hope. He did not offer excuses. He only spoke of his own silence. The silence that had protected wrongdoing, even though he knew it was happening. His voice cracked at the end of his statement, but it was also the moment he called for reform. Not out of shame, but from the belief that a new beginning was possible. Marcus was the last to speak. He stood there without notes, without a microphone. His voice echoed off every wall in the room, deep, steady, not pleading for sympathy. He did not call himself a victim, nor did he claim to be a hero, only a soldier who had been chosen to be forgotten. Justice is not a media campaign, he said. It is an oath, and if no one else keeps that oath, then I will. The entire audience rose to their feet. Applause erupted, irregular in rhythm, but resounding like thunder. At the same moment, at the private airstrip north of town, Marcus and a group of fellow veterans lay in ambush from early morning. They knew Vance would try to flee, not by law, but with money and forged passports. When the black SUV rolled onto the runway, Marcus was the first to step out and block the vehicle's path. He carried no weapon, only his unwavering voice and gaze. You sold your pledge to protect for nothing. You no longer have the right to escape. Vance opened the car door, his hand slowly reaching for his gun. In that instant, time seemed to pause, but only for a fraction of a second. From the left came a sharp crack. A bullet from one of Marcus's former comrades struck Vance's shoulder, dropping him before he could fire a single shot. Federal agents, led by Olivia, stormed in immediately afterward, handcuffing Vance before he could even take a full breath. On his person were cash, fake passports, and a hard drive containing internal documents on the dealings between Apex and law enforcement, a living, undeniable record of evidence. The case spread beyond Riverbrook's borders. The name Sentinels appeared in reports from 7 other states, triggering a chain of federal investigations. The network of corruption that had operated silently for nearly a decade was now being exposed, layer by layer. Riverbrook changed, too. Starlight Diner reopened, this time under new management, where no one was turned away because of how they looked. Claire did not return there. Instead, she opened a non-profit cafe on the east side of town, where she hired unemployed veterans as staff, where every cup of coffee was brewed with the purpose of restoring dignity. Marcus lived in a small house near the pine forest. Each morning, he brewed a cup of black coffee, then sat quietly at an old wooden table. On it lay a tin box holding dog tags, the names that no one called anymore, but which remained firmly in his heart. He did not read them aloud. He did not cry. He simply placed his hand over the box, as if greeting those who had been left behind. 1 year later, the Hayes Veterans Center was inaugurated in downtown Riverbrook. No flashy sign, just a modest red brick building, but inside it offered a comprehensive system of medical, psychological, and vocational support for veterans and the homeless. People called it a symbol of real justice, where words were accompanied by action. Then, on a peaceful afternoon, Marcus received a letter, sent from Alabama. The handwriting was messy but sincere. The writer was a young veteran who had been unemployed, living in his car, cut off from his family. The letter was not long, but it contained a sentence that left Marcus standing still for a long time. I was going to end it all, but your story made me stop. Now I have a job. I have a home. Thank you for not staying silent. Marcus folded the letter, placed it on the table. For the first time in many years, he felt something clearly. Hope. He stepped out of Claire's cafe where people were laughing and talking. The sunset poured across the road, casting a brilliant golden glow over Riverbrook. a town once stained by neglect, now shining bright again. The story of Marcus Hayes is not just the journey of a homeless black veteran fighting for dignity. It is also the spark that ignited hope for millions of forgotten people. From one frigid night at Starlight Diner, Riverbrook became a symbol of justice. It proved that one person daring to stand can change an entire nation. But the story doesn't end there. The next developments will leave you in awe, revealing deeper secrets and unexpected victories. Dear viewers, stay tuned. Before you relax, take a second to like this video and subscribe if you truly love inspiring stories like this. In the comments, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm always excited to see people from around the world tuning in. Thank you for being here. Let's continue to spread the flame of justice. See you in the next video, where we will explore more stories that touch the heart.